Hey everyone, welcome. It's Baron. We are a few days into the new Path of Exile League, Keepers of the Flame, and since the Arc build got a fair bit of traction and popularity, I wanted to publish some quick updates on how the League impacts the build and a few basic troubleshooting tips you may find helpful, especially early in progression. Just so you're aware, I did not League start the Arc Elementalist myself this time around, since I've played it several times recently, and I was looking forward to trying something else. You can see I'm playing a Juggernaut this time around, but I do have a lot of experience troubleshooting this particular build for other players, as do some other folks in my Discord, so I am confident that we can get you up and running if you are having any issues. Now, the good news for this league is that with the Ignite proliferation and later on explosions, this is one of the best possible spellcasters for interacting with the new league mechanic. The most common pain point that I've been hearing across the PoE community is getting swarmed from too many directions, too much monster density, and the NPC dies before you can do anything about it. But this is a build that absolutely thrives on being surrounded by way too many enemies and being able to proliferate a screen or two away. So I'm hopeful that this will continue to function well on that mechanic deep into the endgame. Fingers crossed. But if you are having issues early in progression, let me go over some tips that I find myself giving pretty commonly. Let's start with some of these more common issues people face in the, these notorious middle tiers of progression as you're advancing your Atlas, yellow maps, the dreaded yellow map slump when you haven't maybe built up those first few precious divine orbs yet. So let's cover three basic categories of difficulty that people face and some quick tips for overcoming them. You can sort of sort these out if you're having issues. So number one is mana regeneration. Last league, Shaper's Seed, the amulet being placed on a mercenary, was an incredibly easy, attractive option, and it effectively solved mana single-handedly. But this league, unless you are ready to make the fairly, I think, meme-worthy decision of equipping a Shaper's Seed amulet yourself, instead of getting any other useful stats on your amulet, we will need some extra attention in the area of mana recovery, because the Lightning Golem alone, while helpful, doesn't quite get us fully there on mana sustain. So first up is our Call of the Brotherhood rings. Switching to these rings for their normal, original purpose of facilitating conversion is actually the least important it has ever been. This league, you technically wouldn't need to swap to these for a while if all you were using them for was conversion. It would be whenever you're ready to make the Chaos Inoculation switch and pick up Incandescent Heart. That's when it starts becoming important to have this damage conversion. However, it may be worth going to them early because they are typically very cheap on League Start, and they come with the useful stat of mana regeneration on each ring. I don't have any reason to expect that the price of these would spike or anything like that, but on the off chance that it does, or perhaps if you're playing solo self-found, the previously Elrion aligned jewelry craft that subtracts 7 from the mana cost of skills, remember that no longer requires syndicate. That comes on a normal crafting pillar nowadays. So you feel free to use that on a rare ring if you're not ready to make the switch over to Call of the Brotherhood yet. Even if you do get your Call of the Brotherhood rings, you are likely to be using a rare amulet, so you should remember that the Elrion craft for minus mana cost can be placed on an amulet slot as well as the ring, so that can help too. Other measures you can take to assist with mana costs are to temporarily include a Clarity Aura and or include the Inspiration support in your main Arc setup. Inspiration is not optimal DPS, it never will be for this build, but it is a hefty discount for your mana cost, and it works synergistically with any flat reductions to mana from jewelry, like we just talked about. You should also prioritize getting the exposure on hit modifier on your gloves as soon as possible, not only for the offensive reasons, which we'll discuss in a minute, but because applying exposure will, as long as you're doing it routinely, it will help you keep your mana regeneration up with Mastermind of Discord. If the gloves are too expensive or unavailable, a playstyle adjustment can be a temporary solution here. Just be sure that you are casting Wave of Conviction routinely to get the bonus from the Ascendancy node that gives you the mana regen. Keep in mind that this 1% that it gives you is actually very powerful. It is 1% of your total mana pool, and this stat is not commonly available. This is one of the few places that you can get it on this Ascendancy node, and it's going to get multiplied by all your sources of increased mana regeneration, like on your Call of the Brotherhood ring. So a lot of these things kind of come together and work synergistically to help us out. So that's mono regen. Next topic up is defenses. It should go without saying that having all your resistances at 75 and life at least 3500 early in maps, these are your bare minimum starting points. If you are dying but you don't have those things yet, that's the number one reason why you should focus on those. But also, by the time you reach maps, you should long since have picked up Shaper of Flames, meaning that everything that you hit and ignite will convert a sizable chunk of the damage it deals to you from physical to fire. This is very potent as a defensive layer. It means that our fire resistance gets to take on a big chunk of the physical damage. But it does require staying on top of your fire resistance and even potentially considering getting some sources of max fire resistance early before you go to the more expensive melding of the flesh setup later on. So a cheap option that you could consider if you are struggling with this, you could get a Rise of the Phoenix shield, or you could make one of your instilled flasks a ruby flask. Again, both just in the interest of raising your max fire resist and even further reducing that incoming physical damage, some of which is getting converted to fire. But in addition to Shaper of Flames, your next top defensive priority should be a small cluster jewel with enduring composure on it. This is going to be how we get our endurance charges. These are a big part of our defense. If it would cost you more than 5 or 10 chaos to buy it, don't. Just alt spam for it yourself. Get any blank 2-mod armor small cluster jewel, which is at least item level 68. That's the baseline cutoff. And you can alt and augmentation spam for the Enduring Composure notable within approximately 50 to 60 attempts on average. At the time of recording this, alterations are going for 7 or 8 to a chaos. So this is very cheap to roll yourself. You don't overpay for this on the market. Now your guard skill, which might be cast when damage taken Molten Shell, or it might be a Mortal Call, but if it's, regardless of what it is, make sure that you've got it titrated to your current hit pool, so that on average, I'd say this is a rule of thumb, you want cast when damage taken to activate your guard skill when you've taken between a quarter and a third at most of your health as damage. Otherwise, it's not very useful if it waits until you're under half health before it pops on. You want it in that first chunk of your health pool. Also make sure that the guard skills required level aligns with the cast when damage taken required level, so that it is actually activating. Finally, like I said, if your armor pool is currently limited, if you're very early in progression, Immortal Call might be a better option. It does not require us to have armor, and it interacts favorably with endurance charges, which we will have. There are also some defensive rune graft options that could help, one of which could help with this guard skill situation. So let's talk rune grafts next. First up is the Molten Ash graft. Might be a good backup guard skill option. But also on grafts, you've got Hardening Olgraft for physical damage reduction and some bonus endurance charge generation, though you will still want Enduring Composure. And then the Aegis Tull graft is like a smaller scale version of Bastion of Elements, the Ascendancy node. But it doesn't take an ascendancy point. It's less effective than a full-scale Bastion of Elements. It's like you've taken Bastion of Elements with 6 or 7 notables taken on your tree, so not very many. But again, it doesn't take up a notable, and if you really wanted, you could take both. They stack favorably with each other, so you could back off one of your offensive ascendancy nodes temporarily. I wouldn't recommend doing it long-term, but if you're very worried about defense early on, you could take Bastion of Elements for a little while. Your long-term solution at defense, of course, is to go Aegis Aurora, Melding of the Flesh, Incandescent Heart, Chaos Inoculation, etc., etc. All the stuff that's in the POB, it's described in the notes section. You can take a look. This is a very potent defensive package, and it's one of my favorite things about the build. But even in the absence of all that, because that can be a little bit expensive to get to, you can still pick up Aegis Aurora early if it is affordable to do so. If that's the only thing that you can afford, that is one piece of the build that works fine in isolation. You can just plunk an Aegis Aurora shield down, even if you haven't converted to Chaos Inoculation yet, because by itself, it is giving you a chunk of energy shield, and then it's giving you ES on block, so that becomes a nice layer of sustain even before energy shield is your main health pool, like it will be when you go to Chaos Inoculation. It is good enough on its own to warrant upgrading to it if the cost is reasonable, which I know is a big if. Speaking of Aegis and Energy Shield, though, it can be a potent defensive layer to switch to Chaos Inoculation and have Energy Shield become your main health pool. Eliminating chaos damage, including poison, deleting 25% of elemental hit damage using Incandescent Heart, gaining access to recharge and Aegis recovery, being able to scale health from better gear base types. All of this is what you gain for the trade-off of not being able to use your flask to recover anymore. The transition to Energy Shield, to Chaos Inoculation, it is now possible far earlier than when the build was created in 3.25, and that is because of the golems and Legion the Primordial. Stone Golem boosts up our global defenses, and Energy Shield counts as a global defense. Just be sure to start storing up a good set of boots, gloves, and helmet that are on Energy Shield base types, and set aside a bit of currency before the changeover so that you can get mono reservation efficiency on a small cluster jewel or helmet. I think the cluster jewel is the more effective option early, because you're going to want to fit in discipline for the changeover, and also you're going to want to get a 5 or 6 link incandescent heart body armor for the changeover. Check on the price of fusings versus tainted fusings versus Black Morrigan, or just keep your eye on the market, since apparently we're learning that the League mechanic is just shitting out 6-link unique items, so you might be able to get this cheaply. Just keep an eye on the market. Now, if you're not ready to make the Energy Shield switch just yet, focus on getting life on your gear and block chance on your shield and skill tree, but do resign yourself to the fact that the build is less tanky in the life incarnation, and that is why we prioritize a switch to Energy Shield when you can. It will make us tankier. Now, on to the offense. Many of these solutions are frankly identical to what's been recommended in the last league, but it's worth reminding ourselves and adding in a couple of new ones here. So first up, if you haven't gotten a Singularity Scepter yet, for goodness sake, do it. It's the single biggest, earliest, cheapest damage upgrade. Get your 6-link and a level 20 Vol Arc as soon as possible. You can be corrupting your own arcs trying to make a Vol Arc. If you need to do that, Vol Arc is a big damage upgrade. The Eye of Malice helmet, but don't take it until you have exposure on hit gloves, or else you will just be buffing enemy resistances, not further decreasing them into the negative. You need exposure. Speaking of which, get those exposure on hit gloves for their own sake, not just for Eye of Malice. They're a big damage increase. The Incandescent Heart body armor, big damage increase, but don't use it until you go Chaos Inoculation, or it will make you less tanky. Get Ignite Proliferation as a glove implicit, not a support gem. This way you can use a better support gem in its place. If you happen to be using Cold to Fire support in your main setup, if that is one of the ones that is currently best for you, in that case, get Elemental or Turbulent quality. Elemental quality is granted by Turbulent Catalyst on your Call of the Brotherhood rings, but again, only with Cold to Fire support. Quality and level up your support gems and your golem gems. This is a big boost. Get a 20/20 Vol Arc, I already said that, sorry. Get a good roll on your Incandescent Hearts damage mod, and get a good corruption. Get an amulet with +1 to lightning skills and any other good modifiers you can find. Upgrade to awakened support gems if and when the cost is reasonable, but these are a big damage boost. Use Cinder Swallow Urn or at Series Promise Flasks, or even both. Arrive's End for explosions can come later on for clear speed. Get Boot Implicits for Scorch or Ignite speed. Rune Grafts. There's Rune Grafts on offense and defense. So Fortress for global defenses, should have mentioned that earlier. Gemcraft for +1 to level of all support gems, which is a really big damage boost, especially once you go Awaken Gems. And then there is the brand new and currently very expensive Runegraft of Refraction. It gives us +1 chain, and for Arc, chains help both clear and single target. So this is a DPS boost for us, but very expensive at the moment. Get a Lethal Pride with nodes giving faster ignites and or second priority burning damage. Look at cluster jewels. Big opportunities here, large and medium. Important nodes are things like Sadist, Snowstorm, Prismatic Heart, Astonishing Affliction, Overshock, and then some good second tier options are Smoking Remains, Inspired Oppression, Blowback, Cooked Alive, Violent Vigoration, like Reinvigoration. There's a ton of options out there. It's not all about getting one or two specific ones. Sadist is usually the best numerically, but there's lots of good stuff out there. Next up, Unbound Ailments. I've talked about this in previous places, in previous videos. Short version is there is a calculation error in POB right now. It's likely bugged and better than it looks. So use the text that I've got in the configuration page and uncheck Unbound Ailments. When you are assessing whether Unbound Ailments is the correct gem for you to use, don't actually have the gem checked in your setup. instead input the text that I have in the configuration setting and see whether that is a DPS increase or not. Sorry that that's confusing. If you don't have much source of increased ailment effect, cast Vol Arc frequently, since Vol Arc has that increased ailment effect built right into the skill. There's actually an argument for skipping ailment effect altogether. If you are already planning on using Vol Arc regularly, you might be better off investing those cluster jewel passes into stuff other than ailment effect. Make sure, and I alluded to this a little bit with Unbound Ailments, make sure you are using the best gems for your setup. Have your POB set up so that you've got Arc checked, Vol Arc unchecked, and the Include in Full DPS box checked for the Arc skill. Be sure the bottom left sorting calculation on the gem page is set to full DPS. This way, hovering over each support gem's checkbox will tell you how much damage you would lose from your full DPS by taking it out. This will help you identify the ones that are having the least impact currently and could potentially be replaced, and let the POB suggestion box tell you what would be the best thing in place of it. You may already have the best ones, but it's worth routinely checking in on this every once in a while. As your build changes, the best gems may change as well. Next up, have Vol Smite either in another socket somewhere or just gem swap it in whenever you are doing a boss fight. Take out Shield Charge if you don't have space for Vol Smite, and have Vol Smite in the place that Shield Charge would have been. And finally, most importantly, prioritize saving up for the switch over to Melding of the Flesh and Nebulous. Even with the Nebulous nerf, this will be a big damage buff, not to mention the obvious defensive benefits of having 90% to all your resistances. You will need to save up for Mana Reservation Efficiency to fit in Purity of Ice, and also save up for other sources of maximum cold resistance in addition to Purity of Ice. Base jewels are a strong option for this. Try not to rely on a Sapphire Flask if you can avoid it, at least not before Mage Blood. It's too inconsistent, especially in bossing. There are also some grafts to consider on the offensive side as well. So Flamecaller, Zoth graft, if you use Shield Charge or Smite to attack enemies, this will cover them in Ash, or you could use Storming Ash graft or Freezing Tull graft. Those are more generic increased damage. I lean more towards Storming Ash since it leans into the build strengths better, I would say. But I think that should do it for like the basic list of, like first upgrades to target and ways to improve your DPS. I will close with a note on Bloodline Ascendancies. I think the best fit, if you wanted one, would be the Trial Master's Priest of Kopek node to make Vol Arc even stronger. The trouble is what to drop for it. Basically, Ignite on Shaper of Flames, Shock on Shaper of Storms, and Exposure from Mastermind of Discord. These are all pretty non-negotiable in terms of damage, so it leaves you in the awkward position of potentially dropping Golems, because the dot multi that you get from the Chaos Golem is like really the only major source of damage from the Golems, but you get so much other quality of life and defense from that. I would say, if you want to, experiment with this, but at your own risk. You have to know that it will require solving defenses and mana recovery in other ways, so I don't really have an official endorsement one way or the other here. And similarly, another interesting possibility would be to use the Nameless Bloodline to add a third ring at the cost of probably a belt prior to Mage Blood. You don't want to give up your utility flasks. You really don't want to give up your amulet. But I don't know if a third ring, is worth a whole belt plus abyssal jewel setup. But if you wanted, you could experiment with something like Polaric Devastation or Pyre or Emberwake, something like that. Again, keep in mind, you're not only giving up your belt and your Stygian abyssal jewel to get that third ring, you're also giving up a fourth ascendancy slot. And I'm just not there on that. So once again, I have no official recommendation here. I'm only thinking out loud about what could be fun to play around with. But I think I'll cut the video here, though. That's probably enough for now. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. Feel free to stop by the Discord if you'd like a POB review, kind of do a tune-up with you. And thank you for tuning in, and take it easy.